What's up guys, it's Mehdi from Embosoft. Welcome back. Today, actually in 2024, I decided to create a new FastAPI tutorial and show you some another things about FastAPI, what's news, and some things about authentication and authorization, about two different ways. As you can see, as a first model, security model with token, how you can take information from token, or how you can get information from login with username and password. That should be our auth2 from FastAPI authentication. And as you can see, we have here login. We can try to log in our database. We will use SQLite database. Now, as you can see, after login, or we have access to this token, and from token we should be able, for example, access to endpoint protect one with token. Without token, of course, you can see it should not be work, and we take error, it's not exist. And with token we are access to welcome to protect route a string, for example, with our information. Or another way, if we are trying to get information from protect2 URL not authenticated, we can try to log in with username and password. As you can see, we have allowed to do logout and close, of course, and take information. As you can see, we get information that we want, and this is just simple example. I didn't written anything. And we have relation database. As you can see, we have already created user with ID, I think is ID1. That means for exact user, we can, for example, user1 with ID. We are going to create a task, title, or description. After execute, you can see ID1 for user1. We are create a first task, string, or I don't know, for example, title fast API and try to learn fast with the API 2024. So that should be. And now, as you can see, ID2 and of course user ID2. And if I try to create task for not exist user, I should be user is not exist, and that means we cannot create user. And yes, that should be our tutorial. And now I just want to start from 0 to hero. And now let's start. I close here from here. Okay, now at the first I'm going to open my Visual Studio Code. I'm going to create new folder, for example under dev. I can name it, I don't know, FastAPI project 2024. And here select folder. The first step, of course, from the terminal, I'm going to create our virtual environment from Python -m -env, and I give it the same name always, and I think it's too better to understand for me. And as you can see, we have it from here. And the next step after we create our virtual environment is a time to active our virtual environment and install more dependency that we need, of course. Just from here, just to active our virtual environment, I say the name of our virtual environment, and what's up? Okay, then script, and of course active. Now, as you can see, here we have active virtual environment is the name of our virtual environment. The first step, of course, pip install FastAPI. It looks good, and as you can see, it's started to install our dependency for FastAPI. And for more information, you can, of course, open FastAPI website, and I will show you. You can just copy paste some other stuff that we don't need to write all codes. Actually, some simple code that we don't need. Actually, I don't have a great internet. This should be take your time. Now, okay. Now, the next step is to create a simple file. You can name it main index as you want. I name it as always main.py, and here from FastAPI import FastAPI. Great. And the next step, of course, we are going to create the instance from FastAPI class. As a default is the name, or you can change this name if you want. FastAPI. Okay, now as you can see, we have instance from FastAPI class, and inside FastAPI class, if you want to learn more, and you can see about constructor, what you can return, routers, title, summary, and some other stuff that we need. And at this time we just need to, for example, method get, and the next step, let me to run it from here. Of course, it's better to understand. From here I just say simple app.get, and custom endpoint URL, just I name it here, or as you want, or home. And now we are going to asynchronize, and I name it home or index as you want. Is the first index or home page, home URL, and what we want to return, of course, is like just simple, that should be just simple object, for example, message, and what we want to return as a message, we can say welcome to FastAPI 22 authentication, authorization, and other stuff. And the next other stuff and important thing is to, of course, is to run our project. I'm going to use Unicorn. If you're familiar with Django, of course, you know Unicorn or another dependency or library from FastAPI or from Python. Just from here, we need to pick install Unicorn. We can actually update our, as I can see here, need an update. Okay, we can copy this as well. Okay, now after that I should be update my pipeline. Okay, now it's time to import Unicorn, and now we can run our project. Actually, you can run project from here, Unicorn blah blah blah, and it's it looks not good. It's good if you have a server, or you are running your project with another stuff. I have already created a video how you can upload your video, or how you can run your project in DigitalOcean and other server. But now I just want to say here name. Now of course name, and from unicorn I call unicorn class. Now as you can see, and inside unicorn, okay, we need some I call method run. Okay, now as you can see, method run get more parameter. What we need at the first, the name of our file, the name is main, that we want to say unicorn run our main project, and this main is called to FastAPI instance, that should be app, and from host, okay, you can just say localhost, or you can type 127.0.0.1 is the same. And another stuff is port. If you don't like, as a default is 88, but I can run it on port 80. Actually, we don't need any. And reload should be true. That means that should be update our code and unicorn project. Okay, now let's just start our project just from Python main.py. We can type Python main.py, and as you can see, the name of our file Python and main.py, this should be running. And from localhost port 8000, and now as you can see is running. But if I type home, because I choose a home here, and as you can see, it's better to write small, or it's better to don't write anything. That means if I open the website, we can get a message, welcome to FastAPI 22, or from docs. Okay, I told you I don't have a great internet. As you can see, get it the same. There's a default name for our route, and the method's name is the index, and get, and from here try it, execute. We can get our message that we have already typed it here, message welcome to FastAPI 2024. Okay, the next step, of course, from here we need some directory for our project, and we will do step to step. Database, of course. Okay, stop it. And we need some other directory, for example model, and for example route, because we don't want to write all route here. We want to and what we need else, we need, of course, here we need a schema. What the schema is, and I should be tell you about the schema, about model, what's different, why we need the schema. And for our authenticator on authorization in our project, I prefer to have another folder. I name it security, and looks good. I think we have any things. We have route, model. Okay, we have controller, or you can name it in FastAPI repository. you want. Okay, now it looks very good. Let me to start to create our database from here. From database, I create a new file. I name it, for example, connection.py. We can copy this connection code from FastAPI database, I think. Okay, testing database. SQLite database. Okay, now it's better. Okay, all that we need, as you can see, we need to install SQL. Now I should be copy this, just stop, and I just want to install it. Of course, for me take a time, I don't have a great internet. And the next step, we can copy this type code and this part code. Now, as you can see, or you want to learn more about, or if you want to use PostgreSQL, or you want to MariaDB or some other database, it's pretty easy actually. You don't need to do more, just copy and paste from here. Okay, great. Now we have our database, and we call the name actually is our database is the SQL app. If you want, you can change the name. Actually, we don't have FastAPI SQL.db, or you can change this directory. We can save our database actually inside database folder or anywhere that you want. And here you can see another example if you want to use PostgreSQL. And now what's important for us is our engine is there. Okay, base is active. This base help us to connect database anywhere or anytime that we want to call database, or you want to call a query from database. At the first you need to open SQLite. You need to create a connection between database and your route and get information. And we need another method. Actually, this method should be help us to open and close database, because if we every time we call this base, database should be open, and if you have a great information or big database, actually should not be work correctly. Yeah, of course it's better every time to open database and close it after use database. Now just from diff, the default name is db. Now just from here I'm going to say db, and we call this session local from here. Now just session local method, and now try. We are open database, use db, we call it db for example, and finally, of course, after use this database, this db name, we want to close our database, db dot close, of course. Okay, we will actually from this database connection string, we will use just this method, because from this method we are allowed to open database and close database every times. Okay, now we have pretty easy our database. I can suggest you, if you have, or I don't know, maybe in future or in another video I can show you how you can make a separate database information, or with username and password. For example, if you have PostgreSQL, it's not good to write username and password here directly. It's better to create another virtual environment, and from here that you can save your username and password from database. It's not save actually, if you write username here and password here. But from SQLite now we don't have any username and password, but you can do that actually if you want. Okay, the next step is to create our model. Now from here I just want to create two models. The first user, I don't prefer to create just user or just user, something like that. Actually user model from pay, and we need another model. For example, we want to create a task. If I have already told you, show you how we want to create our project, and I take a name task model dot pay. Okay, now from user we are going to just from SQL, just import, for example, boolean, what we need, and we need column, we need, for example, integer for ID, and string, date and time, or from date, from date time, just import date time, and from database folder, database sorry, I didn't write the correct name here. Okay, from database.connection, import just base, and just again from, I have a new keyboard actually, I cannot type too fast. Okay, now or import relationship. Okay, good. Now the first step, of course, to create a user class, and this class is inherited from base database. That means we want to use that after run our project. We want automatically create our model, our user model, our database. That means we need to say is coming from base, and from here, and table name should be user, of course, or should be, sorry, users. And okay, great. The next step, we are define database name. That should be the name of our data model class or our table in SQLite database. Table name should be user, to call it from another class model. Now ID at the first, what we need. Column ID should be integer that we have already added, and primary key should be, of course, true. That means automatically create primary key for this column. And username, again, column string unique to, and of course index true as well. That should be our username. And password, again, column should be a string as well, and is active. If you want to activate the user, you can use that. And column. I want to use boolean true or false. User is active or is not active. Default should be true as well. And what we need is created. That should be that should work it automatically, and we don't need to add anything. I want to, after every time if I create a user, I want to automatically create a datum, create a date for this user. This user is created at this date, for example. Okay, now datetime, and I get a default value for this data from datetime that I have already added from datetime class. I say datetime.now. Okay, great. The next step is it's time to create a relation to another user. That means is one to more connection or relationship. That means any user allowed to have more tasks, but every task is actually is just for one user. Now I'm just from here I just can say tasks relationship task and back. Okay, that should be the name of our class, something like that, and we need to create it from task model. And now I can say, hey, relationship, or say back up should be from user class. Okay, now it looks good. Now we have one to more relation from here. If I come back to task, yes, from here I think we can copy this tile, this part, and now from here just I'm going to call class task. Okay, now from big, sorry, from big, oh, now is the time to table name. Okay, that, for example, the tasks, that we should be see that in our database in SQLite. Okay, now about ID, actually it's the same. Let me to save the time. Okay, and now what we need is we need something like that. We need title, for example. We need description. What we need, created add, of course. It's not after create any task we can save this information as well, and every task we can define if is boolean, and that should be is completed or not. That means is finished or not. Okay, now looks good. All that we need, we have here description, created ad. Okay, now looks good. The another stuff is to create a relationship from here, from user and task. Now I just want to say user ID column, okay, integer, and version, of course. No, looks better. Okay. Yes. Version K. And I think I forgot to add it from here. Just version K. Okay. No, it's better. Version K should be actually the same users. It should be these users and this ID that we can see. That means users dot ID, and not of course here. What we need else? Now we can say user relationship to class user and backport to tasks. Okay, great. Okay, now let's just to continue. Actually, all that we do here from model, that should be our model data or model class. That should be our table or database, and it's not anything else. But all information that what we want to see from, for example, if I open our website again, schema help us actually, that should be help us to fill all stuff from here, how you want to execute your parameter, how you want to call parameter, how you want to write, or how would you like actually to is this communication actually from FastAPI website that you want to call model class that help us to use that. Now if I close that from schema, for example, I can show you. We have user schema file. I created another file. I named it user schema file, and of course task schema that file. Okay, inside user, and you can see more information if you want to learn how does it work, and from just from FastAPI, FastAPI class, FastAPI tutorial or documentation. Now, at the first from Pydantic, that should be really helpful. From FastAPI, I should add base model. This base model will help us actually to have a shortcut and do more. Actually, you can see actually what we can do from Pydantic class. And from date time, just import data, and of course now from before continue, because we have a relation class, it's better to call from, we don't have class schema task. Now let's to start just from here. I can say class user base, that should be inherits from base model. What should be return user base, for example, just username and is str, and we need another schema class, for example user create, and again from base model, from user we want to add password, and this schema, and we need another schema as well to name it, for example just from class user. This schema help us actually the both of this model is should be inherited from user class, and from here as well. If I type user base, now we have ID. Actually it's the same from user model. All that we have here, we have ID. We can say ID should be int. We have is active, that should be boolean or just bool. We have task. As you can see, this task is coming from here. That should be, because after, or if you want after call user, it should be possible from a schema that to see you are allowed to return task as, for example, as a list or array. From user class we can take task array, that should be list. What you just need to know, a schema is not directly, actually you are allowed to don't write a schema. It should not, you are not must to use a schema, but it's very helpful to understand a schema, because it's pretty clean code. After you run a project, you are allowed to see what did you do, what you need to tip, or what you need to add. As is the best as the first I write this code, and I will show you exactly what we can do from task. Okay, we have tasks, and the first of course should be empty, and we have username, that should be str, and created that should be from class date time. I have already added. Okay, now this looks good. And some other stuff that we need, as is suggested from FastAPI documentation, is to use class config. This class config help us actually to active this ORM SQL communication. Should be true as well. Okay, now it's good, great. Now I'm coming back from task schema. All that we need to do, again we need to from Authenticate import base model, of course. Okay. And the next step, now for example I create a class task base. Again it's the same, actually it looks like the user base, or you can change this name as well as you want to do, what's understanding for you. Base model. Okay, task base, for example I can say should be title str, and can be description str, or allowed to be none equals none, that should be allowed to be empty actually as well. Now we have, for example, now it's task. Task create again from task base. Task base class inherits from this class. I hope you understand this relation from this schema. Actually, all that you need is depend to your project. You can do everything that you want. Everything you can just override what you want to show from endpoint browser. What's better for you? You want to create a task create. You want to create task delete, or I don't know what you need to do. And now I say just pass. And now just of course need a class task should be the same for like my task, and just I can say class task inherit from task base of course, and int or just id should be int, or user id should be int. Okay, great. Now the class config again for our ORM SQLite database SQL ORM mode should be true as well. Okay, now as you can see we have error here. We didn't add it from task class from that. We want to add it from here, and all that we need to do, we can just call it from task inside here, not tasks, just task. Now as you can see, that says I can find a task from model, not we want to find a task from a schema task. Okay, now as you can see is there, and I think now we don't have any error. Okay, now looks good. And now we have our model, we have our schema. The next step, we can start from repository. We can create our just our simple CRUD that should be create, read, delete, or update. Actually, in this project we don't do anything from delete or update. We need to create, we need to get, and some other stuff. Now we can see actually what we need. We can create it. Okay, now from here again, I'm creating two files. Again, user just user CRUD that pay, for example, and task CRUD dot pay. Looks great. I'm clean here this edit. Okay, now let's come back. Okay, now just from here, from SQL ORM, just import session for database, and from model, of course. Actually, as you can see, from CRUD we are not work with a schema, because a schema is just a schema. It's just what you want to see. It's not to work actually. Is you can imagine a schema, something's class. This is just a structure. It's just a structure to show you what you what you must to call, what you need to do, or some things like that. But if you want to work with real information, real data, you need to work with model. Okay, now from model, that user model, just it's better to say from model import user model, and from schema import user schema. And of course now we are allowed to write some simple CRUD method. At the first we want to, for example, create a controller. The first method controller should be get a user by username. I can say def get user by username, and parameter should be db session. That means if when we want to get a user from database, at the first we need to connect to db, we need to connect to our database, we need to call this db, and after that is the second parameter. For example, we want to find username, we can say username, that should be here as str. And what we want to return, of course, we want to find this username. If it exists, we can say db dot query from user model dot class user dot filter, what we want to filter, user model dot username. Which username? The username is equals to this parameter, this username. And if you find it, just return it. Just first. It's just simple. But if when we want to call this method from db, it's too important. We need to call our method get db from anywhere. At the first should be database should be open. We need to open database, get this query from this db, and after that we want to close our database. And we can write another method. For example, I just want to copy this. Get a user by ID. Sometimes we need to get ID. Again, here ID of course should be int. And now we can say get UV from ID. As you can see, it's pretty easy to return a user by anything that we need. And I just want to create another method. We need, of course, to create a user. Create user. Again, at the first, every time if you want to call any controller, any CRUD, you need connect to database. And just say db to connect to session. And now we want to create a db. As you can see from schema, now we have the simple way. Actually, if you can, as you can see, this model has username, password, is active, and task. We can just simply, it's not simple. If we can say user name should be str, password should be str. Actually, it's not good. Imagine you have more, I don't know, more than 20 columns. You cannot write anything here. The best way to call your structure user schema. Now we can say user user schema, sorry, user schema method user create. It's finish. Actually, it's finish. If I call this method, actually I call automatically this class, this structure, this from user schema. You can see I can add username created or password. As you can see, everything's. This looks more professional and easy. And we have password. There are another things. We don't want to save password in our database like you see or you type or user type. That means if the user type this password, we want to hash password. We don't want to save password like this. Password must hash it, should be hashed. And for example, I name it fake. This is just the same. It's just a name. Hashed password and hash, of course, password or okay. Now at this time we don't have any method for hash password. We are not still working with the security stuff. Just I can say at this time, yes, actually we need or we must to change it after create our security stuff. I can say just user dot password. Okay. Now I can see now is the time to save information, user schema, user create a schema in database. You can say udb user should be user model. Now dot class user, I create the instance, I create the object. Now here create the object from user class. Now I want to create an object with help user schema and paste it to db user. Now I can say username equals user dot username and password equals user dot password. Actually, it's not user password, is our fake password. Sorry, because. And the next step, of course, I just cv.add what we want to add. User db user. After that, we want to say db.commit. That should be push it. And of course db.refresh. What we want to refresh, not all our database, just db user. And after create the user, we want to return db user what we have created. Okay, now this looks good. The next step is to create a task. I'm coming back from here. We want here again from SQL dot get items. Yeah, suppose you want to get all items, we can create a method at the first. If I have always said we need connect to database, and after that we can, for example, I don't know, we can skip because we have list from to return. Actually we don't not to do that because we want to get all. Yes, it's possible to limit how many records you want to return. You can define a limit here, and you can say just limited, just return, for example, 50. But I just need to connect to database and return db.query task model task and dot all return or def create user task. That means this task is for our user. Again, connect to database, and of course we need the task or our item. What do you need? Choose a name that you want. Task schema dot task create. You have already know what's the task create is coming from task. From here, title and description. Okay, task create, and of course user ID. That means for who you want to create this task, or which user create this task is better. Now db item or db task, what you want. Task model dot task, of course all. Before that, item dot dictionary, because we have an array to create, and user ID should be equals to user ID, and of course again db.add db item db.committed db.refresh db item, and of course after create a task we want to return it. To return it, just we can say, hey, just return db item. Okay, now as you can see we have our repository, we have our model, we have our schema, we have our database connection. The next step is to create our route to call or use this repository, user create, user find, or anything else. Okay, now come back here to router. I created two folder again, user route that file, and I need another file. I name it of course task route.pay. Okay, great. Now let's start from user, and I think it's better. Okay, from user, at the first, for example, we can create a user. That should be our first step to do that. Before that, we need to call some class and methods. just from FastAPI import depends API router, of course, what it is, for example HTTP exception, and of course the status for any error, and we need, actually as you can see from route we want to call any repository. As you can see, any repository has this parameter, that means we need to call database. Then from square dot or new import session, and of course connect to database from database connection. I'm going to call db get db. We want to call this method connect to database, and at this time what we need is, of course, we want to work with our CRUD. That means from repository just import user CRUD, or just from schema. This template or this structure help us to create our endpoint here as well. Just import user schema, and what we need is, now I think this looks good. Okay, now let's continue. At the first I'm going to create route. I cannot call app, something like that we have already see from here. I want to, as you can see, if I want to use this structure, I need to call this FastAPI class and create the instance from class. Actually looks not good. We are going to work with API router, allow us to use another router with our another name. I name it, for example, user router, and API router. As you can see, the first parameter is prefix. That means it's this prefix, and return str. I say prefix should be user, for example. And now if I want to create my first endpoint, something like this, I can say, I can use this name. I can say user router dot method post. What we want to post, we want to create user. Why I add this slash? Because here I don't have any. If you have this, you don't need to add it from here, but I prefer to do it like that. And what we need else? Now, response model, what we want to return after created. You can say, for example, that should be our response model, user schema dot user class, and tags. What's this tags actually? This tags, if I open this project, or just let me, I can tell you again. Now I take it just name, for example, users, but I will show you what's this tags actually. Why we need this? Actually, we don't need these tags, but it's to organization our endpoint in FastAPI docs website. Now and that was all. And def create our method, create user. We can say user from user schema dot user create, of course. Okay, create user, get a user at the first, and then need connect to database, because here if we want to create a user, as a parameter is coming our database, and then schema this user. And now I can say I send this user as response model, and for database just connect to database from session, and depends on this method. That means connect. When we add depends, that means it depends without this depends, it's not work. We must, or FastAPI must, to call this method to open our database for us. Okay, now from here db user crud, we want to call this method now. We can say dot and we need another things to do. As you can see, we can create user or get user by user ID and get user by username. Actually, it looks not good if we have two same username in our database. We can do some things. We can get user by username to be sure if this user exists or not. If exists, should not be allowed to create the same name. That means get user by username, need a db as a parameter, db, and need a username. That should be user dot username. Okay, if exists, if db user exists, of course we don't want to save this username in our database because have already exist, and we can say we can return an error, for example HTTP exception from status code, I don't know, maybe 400, and details can be I don't know, you can just say username is already registered or exists. And if this username is not exist, just return user crud dot create user. We want to add this user, complete this model user. We can say db should be db, and of course user should be user. Okay, that should be our first endpoint. Create user endpoint. Now let's call this method and test it if it's work. I'm coming back now from main. All that we need to close that. At the first we need to create our database from this model. We don't, at this time we don't have any database, and then we call our method. I'm coming back here, just you can say from database dot connection import base, and of course engine to create database, and from route import user route. Okay, now I'm coming down. For example, config routes. I can say app dot include router from user route dot again user router. User route actually is the name from this file, and inside this file we have this router. No, this looks better, I think. And the next step is to create our database. Create the database table. Okay, just I'm calling base. Why base? Because inside model we have create base. Now I can just call this base for all project metadata dot create all bind should be equals to our engine. Okay, now it looks good. Let's to start and check if it's work. Everything's now, as you can see, after run our project, database is created successfully, and if I run our project from what we have here, okay, from docs. Now as you can see, we have method post to create user. I open it, try it. Now as you can see, get a username, a string as a default, and password as a default as well. If I create it, okay, you have some error. We can check. Okay, model user both dependency has been defined. Task field, locate main task with class name, consider ending relationship. Okay, that means class after both dependency. Now we come back to our model. Let me at this time run it, and I will show you how you can. Okay, now as you can see, users exist, and this error is here because we don't have any task in our database, and it's not exist any task, and it's not exist any user, and we have one to more relationship, and it could not be able to create our database. Is the best way to do that is to define actually default value for task, or define any as a default that you don't get any error. Now I have created our first, as you can see, we have a response we get created at task is active, and ID. All this information is coming from our schema. Now as you can see, created ad should be created automatically because we have said from here have a default value as a default value. We can define any default value from here that we don't get any error. But at this time we don't get any error because I'm created one user. If I try to create a user, of course I get error. That this task is actually is empty and don't have any default value. Okay, now we can just create default value, for example, just or something else. Okay, now what I want to show you, if we create our route, we need to stop this and we don't get any error. As you can see, native class, data class is configured. We cannot change this because the database is created already and it's not possible to do this exchange on database. It's the better way to delete database again, but not from here. From here. Okay, I cannot, yes, because it's running and I cannot. Okay, now I can delete it. Now I'm possible, of course, to run Python main.py. Okay, of course. Task actually is a list that we have. Okay, it's not created already. Okay, now let me to show you later how you can solve this problem, because if I now say, you will not understand how does it work. Okay, and now as you can see, we have our first endpoint from here, from create user endpoint. The next thing is to what we can to do from user. Maybe we can log in. Actually, login should be good as well. But for login, we need to do some security stuff. For create a token, create a hash pass, and authenticator user. Actually, there is some stuff here to do from security, but it's pretty easy. It's really easy. And for our user, I create, for example, user user security pay. Looks good. And now let's come back from here again. User router that post what you need to know. It's pretty important. It's not any difference between token or login or token. That means now I cannot actually explain this because I don't have any security stuff here. Let me to show you, or I tell you later. I choose token instance login. For us is not any different, but I prefer to choose token name, and I will just tell you why. And about tags here, I hope you have already understand. And these tags, actually is this name that you see from here. It's maybe really clean code, or it's clean to read. Actually, I would you like to say is easy to read, and is organization for you. This endpoint is for user. This endpoint is for task. This endpoint is for admin or anything else. As you can see, schema user. We can see here as well. Username, password. If you don't like to see this schema here, do that. You can say include in schema false. And if you come back and again, oh really, okay. Now as you what happened here? I have really poor internet here, and now okay, now it's complete. It's not list bar here because I said include schema, but I can show you later how we can hidden all schema from here. But is because if you want to add for any endpoint or any method, is not easy that you call for any endpoint. This user or this schema should be hidden from here. But we can create custom class and say all schema should be hidden. Okay, now let's continue from here. I give it this same task name. Okay, now another method after create user is login user. I want to say def login method, and I want to show you some another things that should be interesting to know. If you want to get, as you can see from here, we get user as object, but we are allowed to get text box. If you want to get a text box for any user that get information from text box is possible that to do that. Just say from data and I need to add it from here. Of course, at the first from FastAPI. Okay, from FastAPI dot security import out password here, and of course out password request form, as you can see. But you are allowed to create custom request form for another endpoint as well. Now I can say should be authenticator request form, and of course depends on this form. That means need to show that db from session again should be depends to get db, because it's not work. Now the next step is to before continue, I'm just going to come back to security stuff and show you how we can create a token, how we can, for our repository, how we can create a hash pass here, and how we can authenticate our user before logging. The user should be authenticated. Okay, now I open it from here. Is again pretty easy. And I just we can copy that actually from here, and first API JW token. Actually we need to this token as well. We need to install this dependency class. I want to copy that. Okay, stop our project. I don't know what's happened here from Visual Studio. Okay, I'm installed that and I am coming down. Okay, great. As you can see from JW, we can verify password or get hash password, and it should be interesting to know. We have authenticator user, we have create access token. For example, if you want to create token, get a current user, actually we need it as well. Get a current active user, we don't need this, that. And token, no, we don't need it at this time. Okay, that I'm just going to copy this simple stuff from here, and we can change this security, and we need to install this passlib as well, and I think we need to pip install passlib. What's about passlib? Passlib is actually with passlib, what we can to do, we can expire or create our data, create our token, what should I name it, algorithm that we want. Okay, now it looks good. Now let's continue. What we need is, we have this token. Okay, now here we have, as you can see, cyber context schema. Actually, this name is our template or is algorithm to create token. You can choose another schema to create or generate token. You can find all these algorithm in internet or website. There are more different schema or algorithm to create token. This is one of the best actually, but you can choose another. For example, you want the algorithm without number. Find algorithm in internet without number. I'm sure you can find it from here. As you can see, generate hash, decoded, and there are so many different algorithms here. I have already find it from anywhere. but you're allowed, actually you can find it. I have already up, but I don't know. This time I don't know, but it's possible. For example, you need an algorithm with with vocable or without vocable or anything else. And as you can see, after we call this endpoint, automatically we will create a token, and after create token we save this token inside out schema. But what's important, suppose you have another name. As you can see, post endpoint, the name is token. If you choose another name, for example login, and here for token you have token name, it's not work it. You don't allow, or you cannot get a token inside auto schema variable, and it's pretty important. If you choose login, here should be login as well. As you can see, if I choose token, here token, and here I have token as well. But again, you cannot fill this this method, this this variable with token. It should not be work. It should not be work. At the end is empty. After call this endpoint, we want to create a token, and we want to pass token inside this variable, and this should be the same like this. But now it's not same because we have API route prefix. We need to add it as well. If you don't type a real on correct endpoint, you cannot have a token inside this variable, and it's it's really important to do that. Okay, now we can continue. Just I want to copy paste, for example, hash password or return password, or just I can write it here. Okay, now from security stuff, I just want to say def hash password, of course, and take a password as a parameter, and should be of course str, and what we want to that commit from here, of course should be str as well. Okay, great. Now further now I get the simple variable name, and from by I need to add it in, of course, from here import by okay bc ripped. Okay, we don't have it. Okay, now I think we need to install it as well. Install no that get salt and hash password, for example, should be hash password should be from receive dot method hash pw, and of course password dot encode to utf8, of course, and salt. Okay, great. And what we need else at the end, after hash password, of course we need hashed password. Then we can say return hashed password dot decode, and what we need to decode it, and we have salt. What's wrong here? It's not recognized. Oh, sorry, that was my bad. Okay, now it's better. Now just want to say here as well. Okay. And what's wrong here again? We have some other problem here. Okay, sorry, that was my bad again. Of course, yeah. That should be here. Okay, now it looks better. Now another, after hash password we need to verify password. And what we need plain password, for example str, and hashed password, and should be str. Okay, great. Now what we need to return, of course we need to return, okay, we need to return it as boot, and that should be verify our password, and after that we can say here return and bc that check identity plain pass dot encode from here, and hashed password should be dot again encode to this. And I think that this part was about password, and we can create access token, for example. Actually, I just want to copy paste it because I want to save it time. And now we have video about 1 hour and 39, and just I will show you what we need. As you can see, for create a token, it's too important that you know we are create a token from user information. That means now to create a token I pass user schema, and from here I just want to say create a token from user ID and from username. If you want inside your token save another information from user, for example is active or is not active, or this user is admin, is super user, or is anything else, you can just simply create a string, for example, is active that we have, or is super user, and then from user dot is active, for example, you can add it from here, or anything that we have from user here. Now it's not suggested because I didn't add it from schema import user schema, and or I don't know, is active, for example. Now as you can see, now we have a token from token information plus user ID, username, or user active. And in future, for example, if you want to have user class with different user, admin, super user, student, I don't know, anything else, is perfect way to manage security step, to define here, to define actually inside your token this information, and every time you can give any user that you want any accessibility, and that should be allowed to access any endpoint or not. And now as you can see, any token have an expire date. That means you want to open endpoint for exact user for 50 minutes. That means that this user allowed to use this token or any token for 50 minutes, as you can see. And here is expire, and after create this time, we are going to create from JWT our token. That was access token. Access token or create access token that was better. Create access token. And another things is to authenticate the user. I want again to copy paste this method to save time. And as you can see, to authenticate the user, what do we need to do? We get username, password, and DB information. From this username and password, we are trying to get user by username CRUD method. Now, if not user, that means user is not exist. If user exists, then it's time to verify password. Why we need to verify password? Because when we are going to create a user, from here we are hashed password. That means from here I just want to say hash password, this method, and this method of course has, as you can see, has a parameter as a string, get a password, and as you can see, take a password and hash this password, and then save it inside database. Now inside database we don't have a password a string, for example, we don't have any password with name, for example, a string. Instead name we have this hash password, and to verify this password we need verified hash password. Now I'm coming back, we need session from that's coming from security. I think that was I have wrote that's coming from schema new base model. Get DB is coming from database, that database, and user CRUD of course that we know is coming from repository, we can say here just from repository import user CRUD. Okay, great. Now that was this user authenticator is not doing anything anything that actually without actually just to verify user that this user is exists. At the first, this user is exists. At the second, user password is correct. Okay, now we can continue. And after user, that was user authenticate. Now we have another model we need to work with. Okay, let's copy paste verify token. This is another stuff from verify token. We give a token here, and from JW we try to open this token. As you can see, get, for example, username, or from here you can get any information inside token. For example, if you create a token, as you can see, we save username and user ID. If we for example, we have user type, if we have an admin or a student or anything else, we can take it out and we can do some statement. If payload get, for example, user type is just super user and then access to verify token or access to any endpoint or anything else, but just to verify token. And that name is, and for example, verify token, I think is good. Okay, now the another stuff, verify token, that actually that is the first authenticate user method with token, and we can create a second authenticated user method get the current user from auth schema. Did auth schema allow us to log in with username and password, and we will authorize or authentication and authorization any user from auth schema, and that should be second authenticate user method, and that was the first with token, that is with username and password. That should be automatically with FastAPI and username and password. Okay, as you can see, we have our security stuff. Now I'm coming back here from token, and I have already told you is really important, get to the same endpoint that you have here, user token. Okay, now for login, what we need to do, and as you said, about 1 hour and 50 minutes, I just again want to copy paste, and let me about 2 hours finish our code. Okay, authenticate user that we have already created inside here, authenticated user. and is we are going to see if this user exists and if username and password is correct. Okay, I add it from security class on create access token that is coming from here. Is that should be our login. After login, we want to get a token, and with this token we want to do first method. We want to use this first method to access any information. Okay. And now I just want, for example, after create login, I want to give you an example for two different access endpoint. At the first with verify token method that will be worked if you are create a user. If you are access to this endpoint with create token, and with this token access to endpoint is too important. As you can see, protected token, that means if you want to access this protected one endpoint depended on this method tells access to this endpoint with token, and this method tells access to this endpoint with username and password that is coming automatically from get current user. And this get current user is actually auto schema. You can directly write here as well, but you need to write another stuff as well. But I prefer to create a separate method that is to really is friendly. Is great to read and something else. Okay, now we have everything. Now as you can see, and everything is work. We have protected user. Actually, now we can run our project and we can test. And what's actually is important for me, and I would maybe I create another video. I want to do some stuff about security because it's taken more time. Sorry, but this is really great structure from FastAPI that you can start. You can improve this code. You can create some other stuff for user, different security stuff, different route, different information, and everything that you want. Okay, about route, I just want to copy paste it again because I have it. That's route. Okay, that now we can run our project and we can test it. But at first I need to delete our database again, and now I can just run our project. Python main way. Okay, great. We need to install it as well. And I just want to do something else. I want to see if pip list. Okay, now as you can see, there is our dependency that we have installed. I want to again pip freeze all information in, for example, required.txt. Now as you can see, you have all this information here. I will be uploaded to GitHub that you can just later just with pip install our rig.txt. You can install our dependency if you want to test this project or run this project. Okay, now of course now Python main.py. Now as you can see is running. I open it's already okay. now as you can see, we can create our first user if we don't get any error, I hope. Okay, we have the same error but about this task, because from here I last times. Okay, now if I come back to user, to inside user, it's the tasks, and looks good, looks good, and tasks is task, and from user, and if I open it from here, users tasks, user tasks. Okay, now looks better. Okay, now let's open it again. Dogs. No, okay, I'm coming back because I forgot to. Okay, because I didn't see my user. Okay, great. Now I'm coming from here. For example, as a default string in a string. Okay, now as you can see, user ID 1, the first user is created successfully with this information, and I'm trying to log in to take a token, a string. After login, we get this token information. Okay, now from protected one, and I get welcome to protected route 1, and from second authenticator or authorization method, we need that to the first to log in from, for example, a string and a string. Okay, now as you can see, it's working successfully. If I open my database, I open my database with two table, users and task, that we have already created, and inside user or browse data, task, user, you can see we hashed password inside database, user is active, and created method is active as well, but we don't have any task. If I create any task, okay, if I create a task for user ID 1, string should be FastAPI 24. Okay, execute. Now as you can see, from ID to execute this user ID, FastAPI information, and I'm coming back, I refresh it, and as you can see, we have added 2 times, created at this time from user 1. And what happened if user 2 tried to create a task? As you can see, user is not exist because we didn't create any user here. We have just one user. Okay, great. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Actually, at the last time I should do copy paste this information, because about 2 hour I thought it's not. I wish I finish it about 1 hour about, but take more time, and we can do more and more. If you like this video, tell me, write comment that I know that I need to continue this tutorial. We can talk about super user, admin user, or we can talk about more security stuff. We can talk about JX or HTML file. We can talk about any endpoint for mobile. We can actually, for me, this FastAPI code, this structure is the base structure. It's the quickest, the really greatest structure to continue for any project. And we need to do more stuff for database and for more security for SQLite this database and something else. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Now bye, see you.